House of the Dragon continues the Game of Thrones epic with a deeper look into the Targaryen bloodline. However, there is no reduction of all of the similar themes and happenings that occurred in the flagship series, with war and intrigue, councils, and armies. Amid the constant disharmony of family strife, song is sung once more in these lands of iron thrones and summer snows. Rhaenyra seems to have a ferocity within her, tough and strong-willed with unyielding drive. She has quite a number of dragons now too, with dragon riders to fly them. Alicent seems to have ferocity as well, but seems to have a soft side to her too, slightly more so than Rhaenyra. Has a regal aspect to her as well, enabling her to fit into the queen role quite well. Daemon, cool and collected, actor can definitely fulfill a variety of different roles to great effect. Also seems determined, unfaltering in his path and his goals, and also loyal, remaining linked to Rhaenyra even amid all the chaos. Aegon, a very intriguing character and well performed as well. Almost seems like another Joffrey on the throne. Does seem to be quite a lot of young rulers, especially in George R. Martin's world and in this kind of time period. Seems slightly pompous and quick to anger or feel slighted, but I also sense some intelligence within him as well. As if there is a small chance that he could be strayed away from a darker path or sense of character, more so than Joffrey. I did feel a bit of melancholy when he fell on his dragon, as Aegon did seem to have interesting aspects to him, as well as with sterling portrayal. Through him and his vicinity, I noticed how there's always multiple voices coming at him from all kinds of different people and angles. So it seems like it can be difficult to know who to trust or whose words should be heeded the most. Especially through George R. Martin and this world, it's shown that it most definitely is difficult to find trust in most anybody, particularly within the Red Keep and the nobility, as they're quick to change affiliation or betray a former ally to fulfill their own goals. Mysaria, also a very intriguing character and mysterious. George R. Martin does a fine job of incorporating a lot of different cultures and backgrounds, making for, to me, a more interesting and enthralling world with variants. Also noticed more of a connection being formed with Rhaenyra under the end of the season, so it remains to be seen what will come of this, as Mysaria's ideas and points of view may be frequented more often to Rhaenyra, and she may be more inclined to listen. As of yet, I haven't noticed any particular sinister aspect to Mysaria's character. However, it still is difficult to determine what her aims are, if there are any at this point. Also wonder if she and Daemon are ever going to meet back up, and what would come of this. Criston Cole definitely seems like a conflicted character. A lot has happened that has involved him in some way or another. Also seemed quite quick to change allegiances when it comes to the Queen, so it remains to be seen if there's any true connection present with these partnerships and if he's someone of a trustworthy disposition. He definitely must be the King's Guard with the most problems or issues going on. He also never seems particularly happy. The King's Guard itself is really well designed too, from their main purpose to their resplendent armor and elegant cloaks. Criston Cole has definitely been playing things with a more risky manner, so it remains to be seen if everything's going to start collapsing around him. The Valerians also feature prominently here too, with strong connections to the major forces in the conflict. It really shows how wide-ranging and far-reaching many of the struggles go, how it affects those from all over the realm, but how his house and family are strong and unrelenting, how they face their challenges head-on. And also just how important the sea is, whether it be port for trading or ships and fleet for warfare. Those that would be seafaring always seem very significant and at the forefront of minds, as they carry with them a major part of the world that greatly affects so much. The conflict between Rhaenyra and Alicent definitely takes center stage and serves as one of the main focal points of the show. This really shows the voraciousness of competition and rivalry, and just how bright it burns between those that share a close connection. In addition, the significance of a mother's love and how much that can overtake. Also notice the growth with the characters and even new actresses in the process. This can definitely be something to keep in mind when it comes to George R. Martin, as his books and histories can span multiple generations. Although Rhaenyra and Alicent seem to have kept some similarities when it comes to personality and presence, I also noticed a general hardening with both as they continue to progress with age. Although perhaps not entirely with these two, the connections and aura shared as children that would be more innocent and with a playful nature turned much more heavy and grim into adulthood. The dragons are astonishing to behold, foreboding but also magnificent and majestic. It is apparent how these grand beasts were able to be such significant factors in the many battles and wars preceding, and why they have so much importance in the happenings of the show. It is truly the age of dragons, with such a high number of them alive and well. The Targaryens always seem to have an upper hand in every conflict, and it certainly shows in the pure dominance of their triumphs and reign. From the first conquest of Aegon the Conqueror in the Fields of Fire, continuing down through the many generations of Targaryen rule. They share similar qualities to other animals and creatures, but also carry with them vicious fang and intense fire. Splendid animation and CGI as well. They're a spectacle to experience with all the minute details and movements. Also have to mention that George R.R. Martin's names and monikers for things are just top-notch too. For example, some of my favorites for the dragons are Balerion the Black Dread, Vermithor the Bronze Fury, Caraxes the Bloodworm, Dreamfire, Drogon Viserion, Sunfire the Golden, Silverwing, Meraxes, Moondancer Vagar. And the swords, Heartsbane, Oathkeeper, Dark Sister, Nightfall, Ice, Lady Forlorn, Dawn, Blackfire, and Lightbringer. The ships, Fury, Black Wind, Silence, Balerion, Titan's Daughter. And also the kings, Aegon the Conqueror, Aegon the Dragon, Maegor the Cruel, Jaehaerys the Old King, Jaehaerys the Wise, Jaehaerys the Conciliator, Viserys the Peaceful, Aegon the Elder, Aegon the Dragonbane, Aegon the Broken King, Baelor the Blessed, Baelor the Beloved, Aerys the Mad King, Robert Baratheon the Usurper. And many of the battles with significant sounding titles also carried with them monikers that would have a more grounded take from those that took part. I also found to be quite noteworthy too. The politics makes a resounding return to the series with many in-depth conversations and council sessions. It harkens back to Game of Thrones when the politics is really at its core. Although it for sure added complexity and, for me, even confusion at times, it also provided intrigue, a more intricate world, and immersion, a chance for the world and happenings to really sink in and resonate. This returns in House of the Dragon with the council back and many a conversation had around the table. Although I will say it remains to be seen what these meetings would actually be like and whether much positive feelings would really emit from these gatherings. Nonetheless, as a viewer, it is nice to see this inclusion once again. Small council. Although the war always seems to be at the spearhead of conversation, I also picked up on many other areas as well, like the economy, foreign relations, contentment within the population, opportunity for growth and advancement, and general state of the realm. It's also interesting how each council member does hold an important and distinguished position or office within the court. For example, there's the hand of the king and the authority second only to the king or queen themselves. Then there's the Grand Maester, master of laws, master of coin, master of ships, commander of the city watch, not to mention the master of whisperers. All these seem to come together to really provide full authority and full encompassing of all manner of aspects and areas of King's Landing and the realm in its entirety. It really shows the intricacy and all it takes in the upkeep of a kingdom and perhaps other kinds of similar nations and civilizations. For example, in the United States of today, there's the cabinet that contains numerous advisors for the president, like the Secretary of State, the Attorney General, Secretary of the Treasury, Secretary of Commerce and Transportation, Secretary of Defense and Homeland Security, Director of National Intelligence. And it does provide a nice categorization of the numerous aspects of the realm. House of the Dragon does have quite a lot of interesting locations as well as with this world as a whole. From the splendor of King's Landing to the gloomy ramparts of Dragonstone to the windswept ports of Driftmark by the sea. Not to mention the vast expanses of the great fields of Westeros, both arid and verdant. The show really captures these locales quite well, adding variety and a complete experience for the viewer. King's Landing is quite intriguing too, with its glorious castles and abodes to its winding streets and alleyways, vibrant plazas, not to mention its more discreet areas such as the Street of Silk. Really a complete display of this kind of locale. Always thought it would be quite the experience to explore and just immerse myself in a capital city such as this. Game of Thrones. House of the Dragon does remind me of Game of Thrones at times and how brilliant that series really was. The premise of happenings and events grounded in reality, but also with just a bit of magic and fantastical elements added into, creating a well-tuned blend. How each character became something unique and significant, even if it didn't seem that way at the beginning. How each character experienced growth as well, in many different ways as the events unfolded around them. Each region and venue having its own themes and atmosphere, really creating a splendid tapestry of interesting and varied locales. the mysteriousness of the lands to the east across the narrow sea, as well as the lands north of the wall. How it was truly not known what would happen or occur, with twists and turns, the dismantling of the usual narrative arcs, with many well-delivered and timely themes and opportunity for discussion, with scenes that really set new benchmarks in filmmaking. All these aspects coming together to make this extraordinary world and series, Game of Thrones. The houses are also paramount in this series as well. The sheer number is quite astounding, with lesser and greater houses. It is cool, though, that they all have distinct and unique sigils, mottos, and for a number of them, locales. This can definitely assist in providing differentiation with unique features and attributes associated with them. And the size of the families is just staggering, with numerous children and brothers and sisters, uncles, nephews, and all manner of connection. It must have been quite helpful to have large families, assistance around the household, and with work, continuing of the family line, partnership and alliance with other families, and companionship. Although I have to say, upkeep for these families must be quite substantial as well. In addition, the continuation of the same names throughout the generations can be quite confounding at times too, although it's also seen most often throughout history. It can be a satisfying, albeit an involved experience, figuring out and exploring all these different houses, the family trees, and the intricacies of this world. Rule. The series also brings to life the cycle of kings or rulers in this world and in history. How many of these kings have quite short reigns, how it's quite rare for a king to have a long and storied reign, and how quickly the population can turn on these rulers for many a reason, from taxes to livelihood to deeds to differing loyalties. A ruler may be the most beloved in the realm, but then the next day he may be the most hated. And how significant and powerful the population can really be. How one dissenting voice or idea can spark like wildfire, can cause an outrage, can cause rebellion. How this population can overrun the authority by sheer number alone, or at the very least create a multitude of casualties and damages. But also how this can spark other lords to gather their forces into conflict, or entire armies can then be called into action. Other lords may find issue with the reigning ruler and start a conflict on their own, calling other allies to their banners. And then there's the battle within the Red Keep itself, with all the whisperings and mistrust lurking within its halls. It is understandable then how these reigns are short-lived, and how the position of king is difficult to maintain, how it can seem like it's always on the verge of collapse. The concept of rule and rulers in its entirety, whether it's meant for people and society, in what ways authority or superiority succeeds or fails. Wanted to mention Jaehaerys too, the conciliator, as he was quite prominent in the book, but doesn't appear as much in the show, as being the Targaryen with the longest reign, 55 years, to where they even started to call him the Old King. How he carried with the many attributes that factored into his role: wise, fair-spoken, open-handed, chivalrous, courageous, decisive, not brooding on issues. How he was oftentimes the ruler to attempt to bring people together or conciliate, to ease tensions between different nations. How he didn't venture too far in either direction when it came to aura and mannerisms, whereas King Aenys before him may not have been stronger defined enough, and King Maegor found much fulfillment of his primary namesake, Maegor the Cruel. King Jaehaerys was able to form a balance with the two. I cannot speak on their way of rule or auras, but strictly in terms of time of rule, some of the longest reigning monarchs are Louis XIV, King of France, ruling for 72 years, and Elizabeth II, Queen of the United Kingdom, ruling for 70 years. I'll also mention disease as well, being a major factor and significant occurrence in these kinds of times, resulting in immense tragedies and darkness. No one was truly safe from the malaise, and many of them would strike quickly and brutally, just completely laying waste to entire civilizations and populations. It is very fortunate that medicine has progressed to such a level as it is today, really changing the world as well as people's well-being. Some of the most significant diseases has been the Spanish flu and the Black Death, where 30 to 60% of the European population was lost. Even in modern times, the recent pandemic has still wreaked havoc and been very significant in the workings of the world and its people. Also thought the great meeting was quite spectacular as well, when all the great lords and ladies gathered from around the realm to discuss the successors of the throne. I did find myself wondering if much progress toward this goal or purpose would actually get accomplished with all the differing opinions and voices. And the sheer number of lords and ladies is astounding, with vast quantities of castles, keeps, halls, and lands all capable of being rolled over in some capacity. It seems Westeros is full of opportunity, with the desire for higher rank or position bountiful, although this is counteracted with just how unseemly other parts of the realm can be, with neglect and lack of concern rampant as well. It was also intriguing how the text is told from 3 differing accounts, and so some parts would be more proper and others would take on a more vulgar inclination. Definitely makes for an interesting read, and also brings about the topic of history itself and how much of it has changed through time, whether it be from various interpretations, a bard adding in some embellishment here and there, or the tale adjusting with each person it passes to. In conclusion, this grand world featuring that Throne of Iron continues on, with more fascinating forays into intrigue, war, family, and power. Close bonds shouted apart, alliances made at high tables and in shadow, of lineage and conflict, of a land wreathed in Dragonfire.